Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be reviewing / reacting to one of Chisgule's recent videos talking about how he predicted the future of Call of Dragons Realms and Kingdoms. This should be an interesting watch to see what he says. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because that helps out a lot. Here we go.
Slow roll the wheel, and I'm just going to talk to you guys, all right? And whatever I get, and it's just going to be kind of in the background, all right? So let's talk about what I said was going to happen, all right? What I said was going to happen is that there were groups that would emerge that would be more powerful, and because they were more powerful, they would attract more players. Remember, there's two states of the game, pre-migration and post-migration. Forget everything you knew about the pre-migration world. Let's talk about the post-migration world, because pre-migration world is a completely different set of rules. A lot of people don't understand. Now we're in the post-migration world, which is following the Rise of Kingdoms tendencies. Rise of Kingdoms made by the same people that make this game. Okay. Now that we've established those are two completely separate worlds, and to compare one to the other is completely irrelevant and not a thing you can do. Now we can talk about what happens in the post-migration world, because when migration got added to this game and kingdoms were formed as kingdoms, everything changed. And I said what was going to happen is that groups that were strong by power would attract players. They would soon realize that some of those groups actually have the fighting spirit and mentality and some of them don't. And eventually, those that don't have that fighting spirit would get outed as being actually not a fighting kingdom. They just have power because they have power. In other words, power attracts power, but that doesn't mean you're a fighter. And the fighters would leave and try to find real fighting kingdoms, okay? And that is in part because the kingdoms that were the strongest were not taking real fights. And so they get outed as not being real fighters. The real fighters go other places. And eventually, you see a collection of fighters into the shells that will emerge as sort of like the real ones, okay? From the Rise of Kingdoms world, you've got these like win almost every time absolute Kraken fighter groups like 1960 that are just undeniable in their excellence in the game. Like it's just, you can't fight it, okay? So what am I saying of that and of Call of Dragons and where we are in this journey? I think we are reaching the point where the real ones potentially emerge. And what forced this?
Okay, so before he gets to what forced this, let me give a kind of a brief breakdown of where he's really going with this. And we've alluded to this before in the past. Basically, what he's just simply talking about is the ladder climbing effect. We've spoken about this when we talk about home kingdoms and players that essentially want to climb the ladder to try and get. Now, this doesn't mean everyone will apply to this, but for those that do, some people will just want to try and move their way up to get into a higher ranked alliance. As you work your way up in higher ranked alliances, again, that's if the kingdom is imbalanced and they're not trying to run some kind of balance structure there. 99.9% of kingdoms usually will have some kind of, usually will be just having kind of a basic default Darwinism, survival of the fittest, and usually it's just imbalanced in general. So by doing this, as you climb the ladder, you will find yourself being able to get into alliances or alliances that are higher up the ladder, having more activity, more spending, more social engagement usually, more overall participation in events and KVK, more fighters, or more people willing to fight, more people willing to lose troops, etc. And that's kind of the same thing that you can think about if you then expand that to kingdoms. And so what he's talking about is before global migration really became a thing, everyone was consolidated, isolated, if you will, kind of on their own Japan island of this is my kingdom, there's that kingdom, but we didn't have a home kingdom for your kingdoms. I realize I'm saying kingdom a lot. And because of that, it very much felt like you had to do a lot of work to organize and to structure all the players and figure out who's all in your kingdom because you weren't able to go and visually view anyone there. And so once migration came out, you basically saw over the next couple seasons a boom of players that were just wanting to move, opportunities. This was, of course, back when it only costed 5k gems to move. Now they have permits, which is similar to passports and rock. And they also reduced the amount of players that can go into kingdoms, which was previously 300 people. Now it's only 150. And now they have the Paragon classifications and some other minor adjustment restrictions they've done for full status kingdoms, etc. So basically that's what it is. It's just the home kingdom ladder climbing effect that is now amplified to the global stage of kingdoms where you're now figuring out, because you have to think about, like, the big kingdoms basically took in lots of players. And a great example, well, for those that did, a great example of this is Kingdom 23. When 23 ended up losing Echo, right? This was the TFS's old kingdom, and a number of people, basically half the alliance split, and those formed Echo, where they went to 40. And then you had ANCS, Ancients, that came in, and Jason just said, look, let's just get as many people in as we can, right? He's been on record saying this. And, right, there was a time where they were able to bring in, right, up to 300 people because of that one basically uncapped season that they didn't really tell anyone about, but you later figured it out. And a lot of kingdoms did this, and it kind of boosted the power up. And so anytime you're bringing players in, and or once migration opens, you're going to start figuring out who are the people who are really contributing to your kingdom and those that are not really contributing to your kingdom. And that, it doesn't mean that it only has to apply to fighting. It could apply to other things. But what Chiz is alluding to here is that basically once migration becomes a thing and you have an opportunity to get in a specific class of player, you then will start to see in these types of games where kingdoms may turn more into fighting and competitive kingdoms, and those are the types of players they're looking for. Therefore, they are also trying to reduce or to basically filter out the fat / the dead weight or the non-fighters from their kingdom, and that's kind of where we ended up getting to.
Up until this last season, okay, people were queuing for formats where you could rig it deeply in your favor. So deeply, it was nonsense, it felt like, to me. Where from like day one, it was like, okay, what's the point? Which like, you can't do that anymore, which is amazing. So the Dragonfall season, I feel, was a triumph for the game. Because now you form a team and the game matches you for teams of roughly equivalent strength. Now, it's not perfect, but it's way closer than what people were doing. Like, not even the same neighborhood, there's a universe of closeness to what people were doing. This is much closer to like, hey, you're about the same, fight it out, all right? And some groups are choosing to abstain from the fight, which is fascinating to watch. And people don't seem to understand the difference, which is remarkable to me, between us with our allies deciding where and when we're going to fight versus surprising your allies by not showing up and abandoning them. But I don't want to get into that drama. It's happened. It is what it is. And BDO, we wouldn't make that choice. And that's fine. We don't need to go there. The point that I'm trying to make is
So basically what Chiz is alluding to here, again, is a video that we covered before with the pay-to-win group and, oh gosh, now I'm already forgetting the other people's names. So essentially his KVK, the group that, the allied group or the enemy group that he's going against, just had a number of things that happened to them. I think this is the EIS PTW team, and there's a few other people there. Again, I'm blanking right now on the other Kingdom / Alliance names. But essentially, the short version is that there were some things that were happening with those groups. People migrating out, not having as much activity, and etc. And essentially, they just opted to not. Some of them opted to not go all in the final zone, and that that basically deprived BDO. And I'm sure those people that opted not to, right, to really fight it out because they felt that, from some people's feedback that I talked to, they felt that it was just kind of a losing battle at that point if they really weren't able to go in at full strength because of some of the situations that were going on throughout their KVK. And I think Chiz is pretty much I do believe he's pretty spot on here, at least when it comes to the Dragonfall season being the best KVK season so far when you're just kind of looking at everything overall, is that with the addition of I do think there's some fine-tuning with the Paragon classifications that need a little bit of work. But as far as something out the box in kind of a vanilla one, I do think it is a good system thus far, where you're able to kind of form teams, and then those teams will get paired based on the matchmaking processing. However, what does need the fine-tuning is either the teams themselves need kind of a hard power cap. Maybe there's limits on who you can team with potentially. Maybe you need more Paragon classifications to be distributed, so it's not only limited to 3 per, but maybe we need to go to 4 or 5 per. There are some things that do need a little bit of work But as I said, out the box, I do think that it is a good foundation to build upon. And there's less of people there's less-ish. You can still arguably take Diplo wins if you really finagle it that way. But I will say that it's not as easy to do it now because of the fact that they have the Paragon classifications and they've limited some of the kingdoms that could potentially team up with each other. So that is one of the benefits and one of the bonuses there when it comes to trying to get more balanced and more fair matchups that would allow for everyone to feel that sense of, oh, well, either team can win, so everyone's going to fight because everyone feels like they have a fair shot at winning. That's kind of the golden feeling that you're trying to elicit. And you want everyone to go in thinking that I have just as much of a shot at being able to be successful in this KVK as the other team does.
The real ones will emerge. Because, look, what do the real ones do? Okay? The real ones are going to take fights throughout the season until they, with their allies, decide it's over. Okay? And in prior seasons, like, we've been in the situation where our allies were like, we're fighting for as long as you're fighting. And like, we love the spirit. And it's like, we all see that it's not winnable, but like, they're all going to fight with us. And I love that, right? Our allies, we've had some really great allies. Okay. And also that doesn't preclude people from also, stacking the deck deeply in their favor. And like, it is what it is. So anyways, long story short, the real ones are going to emerge. And what do real ones do? They fight wherever there are fighting opportunities. They are going to be ruthless and aggressive in seeking out those fights and often fighting even when they can't win. They're going to expect massive amounts of dead troops from every player. That doesn't mean it always happens, but they're going to expect it. And they're going to have very high KP standards. And they're going to be expecting lots of people to be getting their resources with dragon coins. It's just like how it's going to be. And you can say, oh, this, that, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm just telling you what happened in Rise of Kingdoms, and I'm telling you, so far we've followed the pattern almost exactly. Like, so shockingly close, I'm even a little bit shocked on how closely the kingdom trajectory is following what happened in Rise of Kingdoms. And in Rise of Kingdoms, to give them the full example, right, I said that groups emerge because they're powerful. You had this group JWM. They were powerful. They attracted more power because they were. They didn't take tough fights all the time. The group fell apart. It is what it is. It was a great group. They have a legacy in Rise of Kingdoms, but like, they weren't actually the fighter group that they espoused to be, and thus it became what it became, right? And it is what it is, right? And we're seeing that now. That is happening right now in Call of Dragons, the sort of falling apart, in my opinion, of some of those groups that were like, yeah, we're the fighters, but like, now they have to actually be the fighters, and it's like, well, the words and the actions and results like aren't matching up, are they? And it just is what it is. Like, I'm not like outing anybody or trying to create drama. It's just like, look at that pattern, like exactly from Rise of Kingdoms. Here it is. And right, the next thing that happened in Rise of Kingdoms is like the real kingdoms start to emerge. And so the real question is, which kingdoms are those going to be? I don't know.
And so I think here on the front of Chiz mentioning that it is a little shocking, to be honest, I don't really think it's that shocking. Again, I think this is a pretty standard and consistent way when you have a similar infrastructure for your game like you do compared to Rock. And even in Infinity Kingdom, when I played that, you saw basically kind of a similar play style, with some exceptions. One of the cool things actually is in Infinity Kingdom, I actually felt like I had a little bit more of a hand in shaping how some of the top kingdoms played out. I remember back when I was playing in Infinity Kingdom, I remember having conversations with the two top kingdoms. I think it was like 57 and 30 something or whatnot. Again, I'm probably 38. Again, I'm blanking on some of the numbers, but these were kind of two of the biggest kingdoms. And one of the things that I always thought was so cool that they did, because I had conversations with some of the people there in management, was that they really wanted to kind of take this approach similar to what I was doing in Kingdoms early on, shortly in beta and then after beta, was having more of a balanced kingdom approach. Because in that game you had 3 colored factions, so a little bit different than Rock and CoD. And so you could have alliances within each of the factions, but you could only join alliances in the that are in the faction you are a part of. And so it kind of made this thing where like you basically had to have like 3 or 6 or 9, right? The kind of divisibles of 3 if you wanted to split it up between the factions. Now, in some other kingdoms, they might have just only went 2 factions, or maybe everyone just piled into 1 faction and swapped over. But the idea being is that 2 of the top kingdoms actually took more of a balanced kingdom approach. And so I believe it was like 3 to 6 alliances at minimum that they all were aspiring to have be balanced in power. And I imagine it's one of the reasons why they probably lasted as long as they did. I haven't checked in recently. But this is something that when you look at Rock and COD, you don't really see that too much. I'm sure it's there, and some kingdoms are practicing more of a balanced approach. And it's definitely a lot more relatable now than it used to be back in the day years ago. However, when you think about some of those kingdoms that are kind of falling apart or trimming, kind of looking to remove some of the dead weight, you end up thinking about like the ANCS group that left 23, the half of the TFS group that left, half of the TSF group that went to Echo. You have a number of people that left War. You have some people that left. What was it like? There was I think a BTR group. There was the SSG group recently. Right, you have a number of people. Now you hear about pay to win. There's even some rumblings about some people maybe leaving EIS. I mean, again, you just think about, right, these names, and you would usually associate them with being fighter alliances, right? Top fighting alliances, top fighting kingdoms. I mean, heck, even look at kind of the counter example of this, or the other side is you look at a group like NTS, right? Think about how much, kind of crap that NTS got, how much shade was being thrown their way for all the cheating, scripting, multi-boxing allegations, right? And again, I'm not saying anything's true or not true, but what I'm saying is just think about the road that they had to go through, and the fact that they're still, again, shaping the narrative, consistently sticking to their guns and putting it out there that, look, we're legit, we're an honest fighting group, and they are having more and more people that are joining their kingdom there in 49, and now they're becoming kind of a household staple name. And I think that speaks to what Chiz is saying here, is that you're going to have those real ones kind of come out. And like I said, regardless if you view them as a real one or not, the point is they've persevered to get to where they are. Even Echo staying together as long as they have, right, and working their way to the top. A number of others, right? Even the Squiggly Eyes group over at YY, right? Like they're showing that they're a quality, solid fighting group, and a number of others too. As I'd have to go look at my sheet to name everyone, so I don't mean to leave anyone off, but just to kind of point to some of to kind of both sides of what Chiz was saying here.
I'm gonna pretend like I know, or am I gonna tell you, right? But like, and I'm not gonna toot my own horn. I like BDO. I've been here since the beginning, and I'll be here until my very last day, and it is what it is, and that's where I plan to be, right? Like, I'm voting with my feet. But anyways, I don't know. It's like the level of maturity of the average player is catching up to the level of maturity of the average player in Rise of Kingdoms. And it's just because the game hasn't been out as long, right? Like you've got 1 year of growth of player mentality here, approaching 2, right? Are we on 2? Oh my God, has it been almost 2 years? I can't keep track anymore. Are we on 2 years? Whatever. Compared to 6 years of Rise of Kingdoms, right? And so the player base is evolving, and I think the natural direction of the game is going to be toward A, more dead troops, B, more real fights, and players are going to collect under the leaders that create those situations, or even persist and fight through bad situations, but not like stupidly, but in ways that make sense. So whatever. We'll see how it works out. How is this wheel working out for me? Am I doing well? I should check to see how far I was with Thunderlin. Chisgule's ranting and ravings could not. And it just is what it is. You can't hide from it now. So it's going to be interesting to see who queues up for Dragonfall again versus who goes back to the old format where they could sort of rig things in their favor. I do like the old formats a lot, actually. And I think that as we get to that world of like more and more groups having the maturity of leadership to create really dynamic fights rather than landslide victories, Those formats are just going to be insanely fun to play. Okay, there we go. Boom. And I like a lot of the mechanics, quite frankly. Like changing the skills around on the heroes was very fun. Anyways, let's do our final 100 spins for gems. We can do the halfway point check, and seems good. Still haven't gone for the artifact for her yet. Making like the Magze decision of like, I should have gone for, I don't know. There's like, and Magze so far above everybody else. It's like, in case I haven't been really clear, I really like my Magze. Damage is very powerful. And Magze is per se an active skill because it's kind of having to wait for a full rage cycle, right? That's unbelievable. So, new marksmen are going to show up, and now, now you've got my attention. I mean, I assume it's new marksman next, right? We're going to hit Gen 4. I don't know if they're anything like Magze, right? Like for the sort of like pokey back and on in here. So it kind of is what it is left over. And then we got another 44. Cool. Seems good. So this is going to continue to be my project. Every day I do this. We're 2 out of 5 on this last. And then we'll have Thalia in the roster. Fully ready to go. How many stars? Probably Thalia. I don't know. And go from there. But overall, very much looking forward to the next season here. Very happy that the season length is being shortened. I feel like that's such a good thing for the state of the game. Because you can get into more of these seasons and pair up with more people. And, regardless of whether or not you win or lose, I've always maintained the position that like once you take the dragon, everybody starts to mentally check out because it's GG and it's kind of over. And in Rise of Kingdoms, we've seen very rarely there are kingdoms that turn around and flip it back in their favor and go from losing to winning, which is amazing. But we're talking like 1 in 1,000 where I think that happens. So I think great things are on their way, I think the direction of the game has been very, very, very good, right? Like this game state compared to where we started is awesome. And like, that's what you would hope for a game that like over time it gets better and better. And I feel that Call of Dragons has been doing exactly that. Now, in terms of my end of season rewards that I'm going to go after here.
Okay. So last thing I'll touch on here before we close it out is when we look towards the next season, for me, the most important thing that just absolutely needs to happen in order for us to not basically run into this definition of insanity cycle is we need to add more kingdoms to the kingdom pool. Possibly make some adjustments on the Paragon classifications where maybe we add 1 more, maybe 2 at the most. So instead of maybe having 3 A, B, C, and Ds, maybe we have 4, maybe we have 5 A, B, C, and Ds. I think it kind of to a degree only makes sense if you're especially going to be adding to the kingdom pool. It's kind of like that thing where you can ban heroes in League of Legends, Dota, you can ban in Marvel Rivals, etc. Right before, like when you're playing competitive matches or tournament matches. But what happens when you've always had the same number of bans and they just keep adding more and more characters, right? But you're not adjusting the overall number of bans that you can make. And it doesn't mean that we're saying you need to be able to ban half of them. But point being is that if you are going to be adding more kingdoms to the pool, I do think making an adjustment, even if it's just only starting off by adding 1 more Paragon kingdom to each of the 4 grade classifications would be great. So to me, I think that those are maybe 2 good starting points so far. And I'd love to hear from you. Again, do you want to see them basically add not only more kingdoms to the kingdom pool, but for the Gen 1 group, are you okay with the Gen 1 group waiting until the Gen 2 group finishes their KVK and then they add those two pools together, right? Because then you'd have 350 plus kingdoms or so. And then maybe if you think adding another Paragon grade, maybe 2, what do you think there? And any other adjustments you think that might help. For me, I think the biggest thing is they just need to increase the kingdom pool so that we will be able to have more closer balanced matchups, having a higher percentage chance of being able to get those done. And then also, like I said, with the Paragon status classifications, those would be my 2. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.